Well, authorities in Gainesville are prepping for possible trouble as the controversial Richard Spencer brings his message of white nationalism to the University of Florida campus. But should universities, public or private, put restrictions on speakers like Spencer? Well, we asked that question to a free speech expert for today's In Depth. So we've been talking a lot this week about Governor Rick Scott's emergency declaration in Alachua County ahead of Richard Spencer's speech this week at the University of Florida. His initial appearance was canceled by the university, but then after the threat of legal action, it was rescheduled. But we want to know, can universities and colleges block a speaker because of their views? Here to address that question is Professor Terri Day. She's with the Barry University School of Law. Thank you very much for coming in, Professor Day.
Thank you for having me.
So obviously, I want to get started because you've recently published an article on this along these lines that's soon to be published in the Florida Law Review.
Yes.
Where do you stand on the controversial, even violence invoking speakers on public campuses?
Well, there's a difference between violence and speech. So speech is protected by the First Amendment, no matter how odious or offensive it is. So my position would be that Richard Spencer has a right to speak at the University of Florida because the University of Florida has opened up its property as a public forum for private speakers to come and speak using the facilities. So once a state institution opens up their property for private speakers, the state institution can't pick and choose who gets to speak based on the subject or the content or who the speaker is.
Coming into this segment, we did mention, obviously, and we've been talking a lot this week about that emergency declaration up in Alachua County. Do you think it was the right move?
Well, my understanding as part of the emergency declaration is to coordinate security forces, so the Alachua Police Department and the Gainesville Police Department. So my understanding is that allows Governor Scott to basically coordinate all the efforts, and that's why there's a state of emergency.
And the National Guard as well. I mean, he can call them up if need be.
Right. And I don't think that's possible unless he calls a state of emergency. So.
I mean, because when you hear state of emergency in Florida, you think it's because of a hurricane or flooding. Do you think that was the right move? I mean, people may be a little scared when they hear state of emergency, but it's just to call up the necessary resources.
Right.
So do you think it was the right move?
Well, I hope that there won't be violence. I think the president of the University of Florida is being very careful based on what happened at the University of Virginia about 6 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And in fact, Richard Spencer was supposed to speak at the University of Florida, as you mentioned, I believe a week or two after the University of Virginia incident, and the president of the University of Florida canceled it. So I think it's prudent for him to consider safety issues. It's unfortunate that just because a speaker is coming to campus and people don't like his viewpoints, that suddenly the university has to pay $500,000 for security.
And we're talking about the violence. We mentioned it. I mean, you think more should be done to the people who incite violence.
Exactly. In fact, there's about 20 states. The legislatures have either proposed or passed laws to give more protection for free speech on college campuses. So I believe that these state legislatures are a little concerned about state universities perhaps coddling a little bit to students who want protection from anything that students find offensive. Certainly, ideas of white supremacy is offensive, but he has a right to have those ideas. And where there's violence, there's no protection under the First Amendment for violence. So I think it would be good for university students and universities to help the student body learn how to counteract offensive speakers and offensive speech with more speech and education instead of violence.
All right, certainly is something we'll be watching closely here. And we appreciate you coming in, Terri Day, professor of at the Barry University School of Law. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Good to have you.
Thank you.